All right, well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. We've been hearing from folks all across the state of Minnesota who have concerns. In many cases, these folks are scared because we know crime rates are up, kids are falling behind, and record inflation is eating away at family budgets. Things are moving in the wrong direction, and Senate Republicans are focused on solutions to put Minnesota back on the right track. Priority number one, public safety. We will put forward proposals to provide funding for more police officers because we know more cops results in less crime. We will put forward proposals to hold violent criminals accountable for their actions. If someone breaks the law, there should be consequences. Our police officer retention will include bonuses as well as pension reforms. Our recruitment ideas will include college scholarships for folks who would like to enter law enforcement as a profession. Another idea that was brought to my attention by a local sheriff, Sheriff DeGeorge from Fillmore County recently, was ideas on how we can incentivize veterans to become police officers. So that's something else that we're going to take a look at. Another priority for us this session will be education. And every discussion related to education will be about what's best for the kids. What can we do to best benefit the kids? And at a time when students are falling behind, we think it's more important than ever for parents to be involved in their children's education and engaged with educators to ensure that our kids are getting the top quality education that they deserve. And we will put a strong focus on literacy. And Senator Chamberlain will talk about that more here in a little bit. And last, but certainly not least, everybody knows the state has a massive budget surplus, $7.7 billion. And all expectations are that surplus will grow after the February forecast. And when you have a budget surplus that large, it means one thing. The state is collecting too much money from the taxpayers. And we've heard loud and clear from the people, give the money back. And instead of a governor gimmick, Senate Republicans are going to focus on permanent, long-term, ongoing tax relief so Minnesotans see more money in their pocket every single paycheck, week after week, month after month, year after year. Permanent, ongoing tax relief. In addition, I think the state of Minnesota is one of maybe 12 or 13 states that still taxes Social Security income. Senate Republicans will make it a priority to repeal the tax on Social Security income. No more taxes on Social Security income. Again, we've been hearing from folks all across the state, and we feel that we're putting forward solutions that will help put Minnesota back on the right track. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Senator Limmer to expand on some of our public safety provisions.
Thank you. My name is Warren Limmer. I'm the chairman of the Senate Judiciary and Crime Prevention Committee. As many know, record violent crime levels are dominating the headlines as well as communities, mostly in our metropolitan area. We know our law enforcement departments are challenged more than ever before, but sadly, the political leadership in some of our major cities has led to massive reductions in police and law enforcement personnel. To address this crisis, we'll work with law enforcement agencies to create incentives and retention policies to help fill their open positions and restore the peace in our communities. Much of the crime wave has been attributed to progressive policies like reducing or eliminating bail so criminals get released immediately, and county prosecutors who are deliberately ignoring various low-level crimes that only embolden bad actors. We intend to remember the victims first before we make public policy. The highest priority of any government is the safety of its citizens. The actions of a few prosecutors are destroying that mission. There's three general areas that we'll be looking at. One is new crimes and enhanced penalties. We plan on creating a new carjacking crime that focuses on those who would use force or intimidation in taking someone else's car. Auto theft appears to be out of control in the metropolitan area. We'll increase penalties for stealing a car to then use it in the furtherance of committing an additional crime as that car is taken. The third will strengthen our penalties for criminals who flee police in a motor vehicle by providing an enhanced aggravated statute. We'll introduce the crime spree interruption bill, a bill to slow down violent offenders by having our justice system serve sentences consecutively, not concurrently like they do now. The other focus would be on prosecutors, judges, and executive accountability. To get more judges and prosecutors to properly punish violent crimes, we'll implement a hard mandatory minimum sentence for violent crimes, mostly committed with firearms. There are other provisions. Other members want to use any weapon that could be considered a threat during that type of crime. Second one, if probable cause exists, prosecutors must move forward with prosecution and may not pick and choose which crimes to charge or exclude entire classes of criminal statute as some are doing right now. We also have a bill to provide for Senate confirmation for Minnesota Sentence Guidelines Commission members. Right now, a few members, 30%, are appointed by the judiciary, and the remaining 70% are appointed by the executive branch or the governor. We think that should be changed. We believe that if they're going to start making policy decisions, then the legislature should confirm who those individuals are and whether they serve a narrow political purpose, or are they really looking out for the political purpose of our citizens. We also were looking at other areas such as applying those same standards to the post board as well. And ultimately, support of law enforcement is vitally important during this crime wave increase. We will help bolster law enforcement by considering grants for retention and recruitment, to continue to encourage people with different backgrounds to enter law enforcement. We have a program called Pathways to Policing. It was originally created to create a more diverse population in our law enforcement ranks. And that too should be increased and improved upon. Certainly there are people outside of the law enforcement community, perhaps mid-career, that would like to be a law enforcement officer but lack the specific credentials. We're going to be looking into that to see if we can get more diverse law enforcement individuals into that career. We also have plans to create a grant program for law enforcement agencies to acquire their very first body cameras. Many of our jurisdictions do not have that, especially in outstate Minnesota. We had that proposal before. Last year it was rejected during conference committee by members in the House. We also want to improve the use of force training dollars and expand the VSET, the Violent Crime Enforcement Team's dollar amount that we gave to the light rail system to be administered by county sheriffs. That's vitally important. Crime is not only increasing around the metropolitan area, but it's also involved itself in our light rail lines in the metropolitan area. And that was a focus last year that was not entirely successful, was not included in our conference committee. I'll stand for questions later.
All right. As Senator Limmer said, we'll take questions after everyone has an opportunity to share more details about our proposals. Next, we will turn it over to Senator Chamberlain.
Good morning. And as it says, we're trying to get on the right track with K-12 as well. Last year, when I was given the privilege to serve as education chair for the Senate Education Committee, and some of you may recall some of these ideas, we had to come up with an idea. So we had a simple goal: listening to parents and also those educators on the ground. It was parents first, second, third, last, and always, parents and kids. So that'll be no different this year. We're going to pick up where we left off last year, parents and kids. We're going to keep it simple. It's about empowering parents, and again, about empowering educators that are working on the ground and not lobbyists and institutions and systems. So, back to basics. There's three parts to back to basics. It's an old idea, but it still applies. First is reading. Second is empowering parents. And thirdly, mental health. Reading, literacy. We should focus all of our efforts on ensuring every child, across all demographics, that those children have 90% reading proficiency, no matter where they're at, who they are. That can be done, and that is where our focus should be. Nothing else matters until the child can read. That is well established. They've been talking about it for 10 years. We're going to continue on that. What happens when you do that? It means fewer children have to go to special ed. It means you have fewer disciplinary problems. Children aren't frustrated. It means fewer mental health issues because they're not angry. They can actually participate and they have hope. It also means disrupting the pathway to prison. When they're reading and they're educated, they have hope, they're going to find opportunity and they won't take that other path. I must say at this point, I will thank Anoka-Hennepin School District, largest in the state, for being the first school district to fully implement the LETTERS program. Before we passed the bill last year, they said that all their educators would get the LETTERS program so they can address and attack the literacy issue in their district. So thank you to Anoka-Hennepin. And others have been out there doing it as well across the state, individual teachers. They've been working on it and they've driven this. Teachers and parents have driven this. Second, empowering parents. That means choice. Giving them the opportunity to decide what is best for their children across the board. They know what's best. They are the parents. It means recognizing the absolute right of parents as the chief educators of their children and have an absolute right to be involved in every aspect of their child's education and be partners with the school system. No questions. We will address curriculum transparency, doxing, and the parents' rights, their absolute rights. Finally, mental health. The last couple of years, as you know, our schools, our educators, and our kids have been subjected to great disruption in their education. It's been difficult for parents, educators, kids. So we have to get back to normal, folks. Back to normal. All kids need to be in school. It is what has to be done. People understand that now, and there should be no excuse. No masks. Back to normal. Dr. Danny Benjamin, a professor at Duke University, professor of pediatrics, had this to say about lockdowns, about the school close downs, the closing of schools specifically. Quote, "Closing schools was the biggest public health failure for children in our lifetime." That disruption is without a doubt, it should be very clear for people now, we have to focus on recovery. Social media, screen time, it has to be addressed. It is disastrous for our kids and our educators. We will continue our support and efforts to support Live More, Screen Less, and educating educators and parents and kids on the proper and safe use of those devices. And finally, we'll go back to the beginning, reading. If kids are reading and they're learning and they know they have hope, their mental health is obviously going to be better. So, we have a simple back to basics idea, a simple plan of reading, empowering parents, and mental health. And it's a simple message of hope and empowerment. And a simple ask is listening to parents and partnering with us in common sense solutions. So thank you very much.
All right, and next we will turn it over to Senator Coleman.
Good morning. My name is Senator Julia Coleman. I'm the Vice Chair of the Taxes Committee, and more importantly, am a mother to 3 little boys under the age of 3, who, like many Minnesota families, is sitting down at the kitchen table and in the face of record inflation and shortages, is trying to figure out how to make our family budget work every time the government opens up our wallets and takes out more money. I've heard the governor and my colleagues across the aisle talk about the $7.7 billion surplus as a good thing, to be praised as a sign of good government, but I couldn't disagree more. Government bank accounts are doing well, but my constituents are paying for it, and their bank accounts are being squeezed. They are telling me that they are struggling with affording everyday life. Their bank accounts aren't facing record surpluses. They are getting hit with rising costs in every part of their lives every single day. They deserve actual relief, not a government spending spree, and they don't want to see a politician use their hard-earned tax dollars to try to buy votes for their own interests. The proposal from the governor, is insulting. It barely covers the monthly costs of diapers in my house. Our priority is permanent, ongoing tax cuts for lower and middle-class Minnesotans, and finally ending the state's punitive tax on senior citizens' fixed Social Security income. We will cut income taxes for low and middle-income workers. They are not a never-ending ATM for a government spending spree. They drive our economy, they paid for the surplus, and they deserve a break. These policies mean a monthly savings in every single paycheck that families will use to afford their lives under the record inflation. The needs of every family may be different, but giving them a break on their taxes puts them in the driver's seats on how to best invest in their family. And we will block Democrat efforts to increase taxes on working Minnesotans, and will continue to fight against regressive tax policies that hit working families the hardest. Thank you.
All right, questions?
Can you put some dollar signs on some of these proposals, specifically the tax proposal? How much are you planning to, how much would these reduce state tax collections?
So we're still working on those details. That'll be rolled out in the next couple weeks, but you can expect a very large tax relief package coming from the Senate Republicans.
Big enough to pay for the senator's diapers?
And then some.
On timing, are there parts of this agenda or package that you're hoping to work with the DFL House and have some deals to get some of this done sooner rather than later?
Well, we're hoping.
The thing this morning, but things that will take precedence in terms of what you're pushing on early in the session versus throughout and towards the end.
Sure. Well, we're hoping that all of our efforts when it comes to public safety, education, and a tax relief package can gain bipartisan support. Again, we're hearing from folks all across the state of Minnesota. We're hearing them loud and clear. These are the priorities. They're concerned about the direction the state's headed, and we feel like these are the solutions to get us back on the right track. Yes.
Senator Chamberlain, maybe you can talk about the mental health piece a little bit more. The governor, in his budget proposal, has a large swath of that surplus money going to investing in school psychologists, for example, and mental health screening statewide. I mean, what do Republicans want when it comes to mental health in schools?
Well, I'm going to go back to the first thing. Unless and until we're at 90% proficiency and this reading issue is addressed, we shouldn't be throwing money at new programs and trying to expand existing programs and burdening educators and the system until these kids are caught up and we're at that 90% proficiency for all children in all demographics. Mental health specifically. Get them back in school, stop messing around with their education. Kids need the stability and the structure of the schools. It is beyond, it is science. It is concluded. It is done. They need to be in school. They need normal structure. They need their friends. They need the schools. And they need to be out of masks. There is no reason they need to be in masks. There's no reason for all these other draconian steps.
Senator, on the masks, are you planning on
Well, I
introducing
got one more piece
sorry.
here.
Okay, sorry.
So getting back in school, back to normal, dealing with the social media issue, and getting the reading thing is going to go a long way to addressing the problems we know are there and we can address.
But the schools don't need any added supports to provide for kids whose mental health is deteriorated?
We have been doing what we can to do that, but it is clear that in my conversation with people, it's going to be a hard time finding enough support system. When I talk to the professionals out there, when I sit around the table with them, there's not enough certified, licensed, qualified mental health professionals to be in every school or every district. But we can build out around that, and we have supported that in the past.
Let me jump in.
Yeah, go ahead.
So to that piece too, so this will be my 12th year in the Senate, and every budget cycle that I've been here, we've increased funding for education. So we're seeing increases in funding, so education funding going like this, but yet the results, the test scores are coming down like this. And a lot of the mental health issues are, as Senator Chamberlain mentioned, short term we need to get the kids back in the classroom on a regular basis. But we also need to give every child the opportunity to be successful in the classroom. And the way we do that starts with reading. Kids need to be proficient in reading. It's difficult to be successful in other subject areas, math, science, history, you name it, if kids are not proficient in reading. And a lot of the mental health issues that kids are having, in addition to what Senator Chamberlain said, is because they're not finding that success. They're having a hard time in the classroom. So let's make sure we bring the level of reading up for all kids. Every single kid in the classroom should have the opportunity to be successful. And the best way to do that is with reading proficiency.
I just had a follow-up for Senator Chamberlain. When you said no masks, are you thinking about introducing actual legislation to like ban mask mandates as some other states have, or you just think it should? Okay.
No. We're focused on, as Senator Miller just said, the spending, the test scores. We're focused all our effort on supporting educators and parents and getting them to read.
Senator,
Democrats have talked about, improving officer retention as well. Are there certain pieces of your public safety proposal where you see bipartisan support?
Could you repeat that? I didn't hear you
Sure.
entirely.
Democrats have also talked about improving officer retention. I was curious if there's certain pieces where you see bipartisan support within your public safety.
I haven't looked very closely at the DFL proposal. I'm focused on ours, of course, and if there's similarity, there's similarity, but nevertheless, we'll be proceeding on helping law enforcement recruit and retain their officers.
So we're at a point right now where violent crime is out of control in our state. You have senior citizens getting beat up and robbed. You have carjackings happening left and right. You have innocent people getting shot. Police officers getting shot. Kids getting shot. Kids are getting shot. At a time when we're seeing violent crime spike like we've never seen before in our state. Democrats are making planting trees a higher priority than more cops. Planting trees a higher priority than more cops. It's time for public officials at all levels to get serious and work together to address the violent crime that's happening in our state right now. We need solutions. And any further efforts to defund or dismantle, demoralize, or weaken police officers' ability to keep people safe are absolute non-starters and are not helpful in the process. Law enforcement is an honorable profession. And Senate Republicans will continue to show our respect and our appreciation for police officers for the work that they do in keeping our communities safe. And to answer your question, we are going to work closely with anyone who will work with us to provide funding for more police officers and hold violent criminals accountable so we can address the violent crime that's happening in our state.
Do you have a price tag for what those recruitment and retention bonuses ought to look like?
We're still working on the details, but you will see a package, a very large package, focused on more funding for police officers, recruitment, retention. Part of the problem is with all this stuff, as you can imagine, it's the beginning of session, and the revisor's office is just getting slammed with bill proposals. And then in addition to that, once a bill is out there and the language is there, that's when the price tag, that's when it gets the numbers from MMB or Department of Revenue or whoever's doing the fiscal note. So more details to come. I think hopefully within the next week or two, we'll have cost estimates, pricing on the law enforcement and public safety provisions as well as the tax provisions.
Senator Miller, Met Council is meeting this afternoon discussing some issues, some ongoing issues with the Southwest Light Rail line. There's been some talk among some of your colleagues about possibly making the Met Council members elected and not appointed as they currently are. Would you support legislation?
I don't know if anyone else wants to address it. I don't know much about it. I haven't heard those proposals, so I'd have to get more information before I comment on it. Does anyone else? I have 3 Metro members here. They could probably comment on it.
Yes, I'm actually the chair of the Legislative Commission on Metropolitan Governance. I actually have to hop back very shortly here on a hearing we're having about Southwest Light Rail. And what I have to say is if the members of the public saw how this project is being handled and the members of the Met Council were elected positions, none of them would be elected, and there is bipartisan feelings about that. Thank you.
Senator Coleman, while you're up there, sorry, I have a question from Dave Org. He's
Yes.
watching on YouTube. What about upper income tax brackets? Are there any changes coming to those folks?
Let Senator Miller.
So our tax relief package will include lowering income tax rates, so every Minnesotan who's working will receive a tax cut. They'll have more money in their pocket, paycheck after paycheck. In addition to that, we're going to provide targeted tax relief in addition to that to lower and middle income Minnesotans. And we will have, again, more details on that when Chair Nelson is available to be here.
Senator Limmer, another one for you from Dave Orrick. What's the end game of stricter sentences? Don't we know where this leads? More people in prison, and is there more money for prison?
Well, quite honestly, there might be a need for more people to be in prison if they're threatening innocent citizens. We seem to have forgotten that as a policy of this state. Again, I opened my comments saying that the number one responsibility of government is the safety of its citizens. It's written into our state constitution. But nevertheless, there are prosecutors that are ignoring not only singular charges against a defendant, they're ignoring entire chapter and verse of our state statutes. That's an entirely different practice. When it comes to budgets, right now, close to 1/4 of 20%, I think, of our prison beds are remaining empty right now. The budget remains the same, so we have plenty of room to put bad actors into our prisons and enforce the law and uphold the rights of victims.
Apologies if I missed this at the press conference a few weeks ago, but have you detailed what you mean by stiffer penalties? Like how lengths, like what exactly you're thinking of there? Is that still in the works?
In my opening comment this morning, I made comments on a few specific crimes. Some of those crimes were carjacking and auto theft. I'm sure, well, we are getting a number of other proposals that the reviser is hurriedly trying to write. We literally have an avalanche of members wanting to respond, and we'll be carefully looking at all of those. Of course, there's budget ramifications on every one. We'll be paying attention to that as well. So it's an unfinished product right now.
So no like X years to X years details yet, just crimes you'll be targeting so far.
Right.
Can I ask about the police money? Did you say that you might actually send grants out to pay for the salaries of police officers, meaning send grants for the state to pay for increased force, or is it more to send grants out to do recruitment, retention, bonuses, things like that? Meaning, because the feds used to do that. They would send money out for 5-year salaries for X number of cops.
So we're talking about retention bonuses for police officers as well as pension reforms. That would be for current police officers. And then as far as the recruitment side goes, we're talking about scholarships for high school students or others who would like to enter law enforcement as a profession. Another idea that was brought forward by some law enforcement professionals was sort of a marketing campaign because so much has been done with the defund the police movement and the dismantle the police movement to put sort of a negative spotlight on police officers that they're having trouble recruiting new folks to enter the profession. Not to mention how much disrespect police officers are treated, the disrespect they're treated with in certain areas. And in some cases, we have police officers who are on duty who are getting spit at, yelled at, sworn at, name called. So the idea behind this was to put together a marketing effort to encourage folks to enter law enforcement as a profession, and we've been told that it's been done in other states, and it's actually been very successful to bring back that positive spotlight on law enforcement and really the spotlight that law enforcement deserves for the work that they do in helping keep people safe. And that's why I said earlier, it's a big part of what we can do as public officials, as policymakers, is show our respect and appreciation for law enforcement, and Senate Republicans are certainly committed to continuing to do that.
Senator Coleman, you had this harrowing account on Facebook about nearly being rear-ended with your kids in the car. Can you tell us what kind of response you've had? Did law enforcement circle back on you?
Absolutely. As background, my children and my husband and I were in a car heading towards St. Paul when we found ourselves in the middle of a high-speed chase. And law enforcement eventually apprehended the people in the car, but it almost rammed into the back of my minivan carrying my 3 little boys. And I shared that story. And the law enforcement response has been, this isn't a rare occasion. This isn't a rare instance. This is becoming more and more prevalent, and it's spreading out to the suburbs. And this is something that we will be looking at this session, myself personally as well. Thanks.
I didn't hear anything about childcare. I wonder if you guys have a thought about that. I know it's becoming increasingly more expensive for Minnesotans to be able to afford that care and go to work. Is there something that you can, work with Democrats on that issue?
One of the biggest issues facing childcare is a shortage of childcare providers, and part of the reason, the main part of that reason is the regulatory burdens that in-home childcare providers have as a result of government mandates. And I just know locally, in the communities that I represent, we've seen many in-home child care providers just simply close because they didn't want to deal with the regulatory burden. Mandate after mandate after mandate on these in-home child care providers. So one of the things I think we can do to help fix this problem, and we should be able to find some bipartisan support, is reduce the regulatory burden on child care providers.
Senator, while you're up there, I've got a question from Brian Max with NPR. He's asking to paint a picture of the first weeks of session. Will there be a vote on redistricting, pandemic worker bonuses, or the unemployment fund?
Well, one of the things that we are trying to work on right now is the staffing issues that healthcare providers and long-term care providers and nursing homes are dealing with. And they've come to me as well as the other legislative leaders on some short-term solutions to help with those staffing issues. And Senate Republicans remain ready to work together with our colleagues in the House and the Senate, as well as the governor's office, to try to address those staffing concerns that hospitals and long-term care providers are dealing with right now. So I think that's something that could happen relatively quickly. As far as the frontline worker pay, we have a proposal, $250 million, that we have put forward that really focuses on the frontline workers who took the most risk during the pandemic to help keep people safe. If we could get support around that, I think there would be an openness to do that. And then, can't remember what else you mentioned.
Unemployment.
Oh, UI. So the UI trust fund, as everyone knows, is in deficit right now as a result of businesses being forced to close by the governor and layoffs happening. Many of those businesses are now closed permanently. So when a business is forced to close, obviously there's going to be more people on unemployment. I think there is bipartisan support amongst the House and Senate, as well as the governor, to address the deficit in the UI trust fund. I hope we can do that relatively quickly. And then, even if we take care of the deficit, small businesses are still paying additional fees until that account reaches a certain level. So hopefully we can come together and put more money in that UI fund, which would help offset the higher taxes and fees that small businesses are paying right now.
Redistricting, I think Brian also asked about. So are you going to even vote on a map, try to work something out with Democrats in the House on that, or just let the clock run out because, 2.5 weeks?
Yep, so the time is stacked against us on redistricting. We got the information late. Of course, we have a divided government. Speaker Hortman and I have had some discussions. I know Chair Johnson and Chair Murphy have had some discussions as well. So we have until February 15th to come to an agreement. It's going to be a challenge. I'm not quite sure that it's going to get done, but we are having discussions, and if we can get there, we'll do it. If not, then it'll be up to the courts.
Have you had any conversation about boosting local government aid?
We boosted local government aid last year. I haven't had any discussions about local government aid this year. I'm a huge proponent of local government aid. I've supported it during my time here in the Senate, and I know there were significant increases over the last few budget cycles, but I haven't heard any discussions about local government aid this year.
That doesn't change at all with the surplus?
No.
Are you hoping for a bonding bill to come out of this session?
I think there's a strong possibility of a bonding bill. Of course, a bonding bill has to originate in the House, has to get bipartisan support in the House and the Senate. I think a lot of the questions, at least that I have, is how do the federal infrastructure funds work? My understanding is there's between $4.5 and $5 billion coming to the state of Minnesota. However, that's over the next 5 years. Some of those funds need a state match, some of them don't. So we're still trying to get a better understanding of how those federal infrastructure dollars will work. And then the next step would be, after we figure out how the federal infrastructure dollars can be used, what is the additional need at the state level? And I think if we focus on core infrastructure projects as well as asset preservation across the state of Minnesota, there's a possibility that we could see a bonding bill get through both the House and the Senate and signed into law by the governor.
Got a follow-up to redistricting from Mary LaHammer. Is there any chance the legislature does congressional maps, not legislative maps?
I believe that it would either be legislative and congressional or nothing at all.
Democrats are talking about healthcare today, pushing for a universal health plan. What's your response to that move? Any health measures that you'll be focusing on, reinsurance or otherwise?
Sure, yeah, well, we feel that reinsurance is the only viable option for the health insurance marketplace next year. The Department of Commerce, based on what I saw, would estimate that anywhere from 10 to 15,000 Minnesotans would be without health care if we do not pass reinsurance, extend reinsurance for one more year. In addition, insurance rates would go up a minimum of 10%, as high as 20%. So we believe reinsurance is the only viable option for next year. And I don't think there is an interest amongst Senate Republicans on a government-run, bureaucratic health system, health plan.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, everybody.